Carol, Stephen, let's have a look at the markets first of all.
Yeah, it's been actually surprisingly a good start to the week after those disappointing jobs figures out of the United States on Friday. All of the Asian markets have managed to start their week in the green, or at least the vast majority of them, that following a positive lead from Wall Street on Friday. Also news out this morning from Japan that their current account surplus has fallen to a record low, not managing to dampen sentiment on the Nikkei, which is up over 1%. This, of course, due to the weak value of the yen and Japan's huge import bill for having to import so much energy in the wake of the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Energy companies like TEPCO among the biggest fallers on the Nikkei this morning. Chinese shares in Shanghai up over 1.7% after the return to business following the Chinese Lunar New Year holiday. Just the Hang Seng in Hong Kong touching slightly into the red, but all over a fairly positive picture.
Well, here in Europe, the Eurozone's new banking regulator has said that weak lenders shouldn't be allowed to fail.
Yeah, this is quite a bold statement from Danielle Nouy, the French woman who's the head of the new single supervisory mechanism at the European Central Bank. In an interview with the Financial Times, she said she wanted to make big banks more careful about their holdings of sovereign debt and shore up how much capital they have when they're holding these debt bonds from governments. This is an effort to break what's called the vicious cycle of failing banks, bringing down the country's economy and vice versa. Now, ahead of those bank stress tests due out in November, she said that we have to accept that some banks have no future. We have to let some disappear in an orderly fashion and not necessarily try to merge them with other institutions. So quite a bold statement from her, saying that some banks should be allowed fail.
Now, Stephen, we've already been talking about the Swiss referendum today. It's calls for a lot of talk. Now, there are some who aren't happy about this possible limit on immigration by EU nationals.
Yeah, that's right. The European Union particularly worried about this. EU nationals have been allowed freely move and work in Switzerland since 1999. But thanks to the weekend's vote, a quota system may now have to be established. The EU Justice Commissioner, Viviane Reding, says that it could have an effect on Switzerland's access to the single market. Switzerland, of course, not a member of the European Union, but does access that single market, the four fundamental freedoms of movement of people, goods, capital and services. Now, Viviane Reding told the Financial Times that those four freedoms aren't separable. And she said the single market is not a Swiss cheese, and you can't have a single market with holes in it. So there could be some discussions on that ahead.
Now, Stephen, I'm not sure if it was the same for you, but we just about made it in this morning due to a taxi strike. Taxi drivers here in Paris staging more protests.
Yeah, the second strike in a month, in fact, affecting taxi services here in the French capital. Drivers unhappy at the competition from private hire companies like Uber is having on their business. They say these companies can operate for much less because the cost of licensing and other charges are much lower for them. Now, the government has tried to level the playing field by placing more restrictions on these so-called tourist vehicles, but the law was struck down by France's Council of State. Dana de Souza has more. Well, you seem to have a problem with that report. We'll just move on. Or we'll try that one more time. Report from Delano de Souza.
Back blocking the streets, taxis in Paris have called for a strike on Monday over competition from private hire companies. In December, the government had introduced a bid to protect traditional taxis from outside competition. Private companies like Uber would have had to wait 15 minutes between receiving an order.
We'll move on now with a look at some of the day's other business news. And Vodafone is said to be prepared to offer I'll start actually with Barclays. My bad. Barclays has begun an investigation into the theft of personal details of 27,000 of its customers, according to the newspaper The Mail on Sunday. The data included information on companies' passports, earnings and health was stolen and sold. The bank says it's notified regulators of the inquiry. He'll be working with authorities to find out who's responsible. Rochelle.
Well, Stephen, thank you very much for that, as ever. It's time now for a look at the web news, so do stay tuned.